Good afternoon. This is the Devar Torah on Parshas Haazinu. It is the next to the last parsha in the Torah in the book of Devarim, Deuteronomy, and it is the third parsha on the last day of Moshe's life. At the end of last week's parsha, he gave a warning that he would be reading this entire song to him with Hashem's instructions. Now, what is very interesting here is this is a parsha that is normally read, not always, but quite often read in the Shabbat Shuvah, the Shabbat between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And that would be a logical time to read it because 2/3 of the parsha, the first 35 verses, Pesukim, of 52, is dealing with admonition of the Jewish people, both at that time and in the future. It covers also the whole history of the world of from the time of creation, the time alludes to the marble, the flood, the Tower of Babel, where the nations were divided into 70 languages. All of this is included in there. And the last third of it does give promises of Hashem's ultimate redemption. So this year, we're reading it in the parsha in the time, when are we reading it? Between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. It's a 5-day period when people are getting ready for Sukkot, including building the sukkah, getting the arbor, meaning the 4 species, and it's a special time. And so how then is that apropos to this period when hopefully at Yom Kippur we've all been sealed for a good year? That's what we say in the last of the prayers of Yom Kippur. Because there is an other underlying theme of the parsha is redemption. Not only is that in the last third of the parsha, but hidden within it in different places. It's throughout. You can find in other places in the first 2/3 of the parsha. Beyond that, we are now heading into the Yantif of Sukkot. And this is a time that is both relevant to us and to the nations. It's a time of Simcha, rejoicing with Hashem. In terms of the time of the year, it's when the harvest is gathered. And we have, therefore, the harvest being complete, especially in ancient times. We have time to rejoice with Hashem. That's for 7 days. There's an 8-day holiday called Shmini Atzeret, which I'll speak about more at another time. In any event, what do we have here? We have a Yantif that is one of Simcha, one of our national celebration. It's also one that involves the nation, because one of the sacrifices that is made every day when there was a temple, and we do it through tefillah now, total up, one type of sacrifice totals up to 70, and that represents the 70 nations, because it's also time we're praying for water, for rain, and the right environment, and the right conditions. And that is not only for us, that is also so that the 70 nations should also prosper. And the theme I would like to go into now is a theme of the what are the more positive aspects of this parsha? What is the deeper meaning of it? And on a historical basis, when we talk about both the hidden part, which I'm going to go to in a minute, and even the more real parts of our liberation, it's going to be a time at the end of days of the ingathering of the Jewish people from all the different exiles. It's also going to be dealing with the final vengeance against the enemies of the Jewish people and the coming of Mashiach, and the key to meeting the resurrection of the dead. All of this will be occurring, of course, in this time frame, this time of year. Now, I'd like to look at the beginning of the Parsha, where it says, Haazinu Hashemayim v'yedabera tishma eretz amri pi. Give, O heavens, and I will speak, and may the earth hear the words of my mouth. Now, it's why does it start off this way? Interestingly enough, it doesn't talk about the Jewish people at all. It doesn't say, normally Moshe has been for the 4 books of the Torah, has 4 books, as many times spoke to Israel at Hashem's command. Why suddenly is he speaking to the heavens and the earth of all things? Why isn't he speaking to the Jewish people? And when we say the heaven and earth, the witnesses, what are we talking about? The sky above where the clouds are? Are we talking about is that what we're talking about? Are we talking about and are we talking about the earth, the rocks, or are we saying something deeper here? And if one looks at it, the wording is very interesting. It says, Haazinu Hashemayim, and v'daber tishma al eretz pi. Literally, the hearing of the Shemayim. Doesn't say here, and that's not the normal words. The, putting a hey means the hearing, and the Shemayim. And we talk about that the earth, hear my words, Tishma haaretz, the land. You should normally say Tishma aretz, Imripi, may to hear the words in my mouth, and is as explained by Rav Yitzchak. What we are talking about is something a little different. And we are saying, first of all, we are saying that, excuse me, Rav Yossi, we're saying that this is different from the wording we have in the prophet Yeshayahu. It's a different wording because we have similar wording, and then it says, Tishma the Aretz. It says there, the Aretz should lay here, and the land should hear, and land should hear, and the sky should hear. There's no ha, there's no hey, there's no definite article there. And it's coming to explain the following: that we are not talking about the sky, that we look up at the blue sky, or even the sky above that night in the night that where we can see, and with assistance now we can see numerous galaxies, especially with the new telescopes, like the Webb telescope. We're not talking about that type of heavens at all. What we are talking about, unlike Prophet Ishayahu, where we are talking about the more physical aspects of the world, here we are talking about the higher heaven, the world, the higher heavens that are Hashem's realms, the higher worlds. And there, talking about Hashem's higher worlds, that's who's going to be witnessing this. So it will be remembered, not the physical sky, not the stars in the sky, the sun, moon, or any of that. And when it talks about the land, it's talking about land in a higher meaning. It says the land of the living. We're not talking about physical land. We're talking about a higher spiritual concept. And therefore, it's not only going to witness this in the negative, it's going to witness it in the positive, because yes, there'll be the testimony when the people do go away from the Torah and mitzvahs, but it's also saying that it's we're being remembered, and that ultimately we will be redeemed. And that's also included in that meaning. And therefore, even though it is the beginning of an admonition, quite a bit of warning, there's a positive element in it. Well, we then say, Rav Yitzchak explains, strange wording, that it's like the oranges in the trees of the forest. Now, strange wording, since when are we comparing in the Haazinu? How are we comparing it to the trees in the forest? An orange tree, and it has a deeper meaning. This is the surface meaning of what this Haazinu is talking about. It has a deeper meaning, and this other meaning is as follows: that the orange tree, according to Rav Yitzchak, the orange tree differs from all other trees. It's separate from all other trees because all other trees have the same colors. They're all green, they're similar. The orange tree, by its nature and its color, stands out. It's the only tree that's apparently is that bright. And therefore, it's saying that's compared to the Jewish people, how fortunate we are that we are not governed by any of Hashem's, God's hosts. We're not governed by angels like all the other 70 nations of the world, but we are just in the orange, in the sense that it's distinct, that we are ruled by God alone. He directly controls our history, and that is significant in itself, because it's only with that direct intervention that we've been able to survive all the challenges and all of the exiles we've had to experience. So for that reason alone, that's what is being referred to here. And that is one other aspect that we see. And I would like to go on to another one now. Now, this pasuk seems quite positive in itself. Let's proceed a couple more verses, and we'll find something else very interesting here. The third pasuk says, "Kashi Hashem Adonai Ekra V'U'Geleh Godel Del Eloheinu." When I call out the name of Hashem, describe greatness to our God. This is something that's said at the beginning of every Shemona Esrei, with the exception of the morning, but it's said in the afternoon davening, and it's said at Musaf, and it then goes on. The next pasuk, we say, "Hatzur Tamim Palav Ki Kol Daracha Mishpat Elamuna Ein Abel Sadik Yashar Hu." The rock, meaning Hashem, perfect is his work, all his paths are just, a God of faith without iniquity, righteous and fair is he. And this is showing a positive aspect that will all be judged fairly by God. And it also teaches us, and it's explained that this means every time we say that, the Son will send down shefa, beneficence, abundance to us, even in times of exile. We're not getting what there was in the time of the temple when the redemption comes, but we're still getting physical and spiritual bounty from Hashem, as is through our behalf the nations. And it teaches us a couple of other things. That, in other words, Hashem will always have us in front of him, and he will never abandon us. Also positive, before we're going to hear all the negative warnings. And it also teaches us that if three people are learning Torah together, that is a blessing giving. And also that when three or more people eat together, that's praise Hashem. And that's all deriving from there. So again, we have a very positive meaning. And now we're going to give another one. We're going to jump ahead a number of verses to what sounds like a truly negative one. Hashem says, Sha'amrati b'peihem. I have said I will scatter them, meaning the Jewish people, those people. Ashavati me'am zarpim. I will cause their memory to cease from man. And then goes on to say some negative things, and that the people really need to be exiled and punished. Now, what do these two expressions mean? The expression, Ephraim, I will scatter them. Now, the Jewish people consisted in Israel of 12 tribes. And the time of King Solomon's son, the kingdom split. The 10 northern tribes became idol worshippers. In fact, they set up golden calves to discourage people from going down to Jerusalem because the king was afraid there'd be a reunification with the people. This was in a place called Dan. This is why Abraham was not able to pursue the four kings any further, because he sensed that a descendant of his was going to be doing something very evil And then the next of the pasuk says, Ishkati me'onish nizraken. I will cause their memory to cease from man. This is the reference, the exile of Yehuda and Benjamin. It was the first exile by Nebuchadnezzar, continued by the Persians. There was exile in Israel by the Greeks. They tried to have us abandon our faith, which I'll speak about more in Hanukkah. And then we have the fourth exile, which we're currently in. And what does it mean, be forgotten? Cease from memory from man. It means that we are unable, that we won't be considered significant. We don't have our own country, didn't have our own army, we didn't have anything. Even though Jews are aware, we were more often subject to persecution than anything else. I mean, there are exceptions in our history, and we have been influenced from one country to another, but we've had to go in exile from one country to another. And sounds pretty negative, but we have to look at it in a slightly different light. The Ramban, when he's speaking about this, the Ramban, in his commentary, says, Imken Hayar Amiti will go. And as I said before, it goes on, Himale Mukobet, that these words, this pasuk, is very, very complicated. They're complex words, means the concepts here expressed are quite complex. And it says, it goes on to say in Ramban's commentary, I've already given a hint that Bria Adam, the creation of man, and a sod of Na'alim, and that there's a secret that is very deep and hidden. And what are we talking about here? To summarize what was said, commentary goes on for quite a while, but the essence of it, and this is a commentary by the Marasanayim, was Rav Yitzhak Daman Abakel. He was a Talmud student of the Ramban, and he explains that in Hashem's conception of the universe, what was his primary thought? Because as we said in the Rosh Hashanah davening, we're talking about how Hashem dwells and sees all the secrets from all the earth. It says, I am the first, and God, I am the first, and I will be the last. First in thought, there's one interpretation Ramban gives. And at the end, last indeed. And what we're seeing here is the first thought that Hashem had before he created anything physical, before he created the higher spiritual worlds, before he even wrote the Torah, which he started 2,000 years before creation. The thing he had was in mind was the Jewish people, because the Jewish people was hope or a reason for the purpose of creation, because he wanted to have somebody that would acknowledge him. And one explanation is given of the Ramban. Not that, but Hashem wanted to be remembered. What does he need remembrance? Not that he needed, nations mean nothing to him. He did for a different reason. One of the explanations in the Ramban is we're the only one who remained his fellow servants. And if the nations of the world could destroy us entirely, they would look at it wrong and say, hey, just like any other nation, it's had its time, it's wiped out. And it would not be understood, Hashem's justice would not be understood. So to prevent that, they would assume it's natural means, natural rules of history, rise and fall of empires. Many people have spoken about that, historians. So therefore, to avoid that, however, as the Marasanayim, Rav Yitzchak, Duran Acho goes deeper and says that it was for the creation and to magnify his name. Did he that everything he created, the entire Seder, were for his people, because even though we were last physically created with Abraham, we were first in his thoughts, and that we in partnership were going to bring the world nations of the world to fruition. And even though Hashem is crowned by the angels and the higher beings, he wanted to be crowned by man, not because he needed their adulation, but so that they would realize the whole purpose of creation and the whole world and everything in it has been set up that way through Torah and mitzvahs. Now, taking that one step further, this is an idea of the Leshem that we are working in partnership with Hashem. In other words, Hashem, as I've explained in the previous Devar Torah, could have simply said, look, this is the time. I decided I'm going to redeem everybody. It's going to be the end of days. Mashiach's going to come, Mashiach ben David, son of King David. However, he wanted us in partnership. And it's through our actions, our mitzvahs, doing Torah and learning Torah and doing the mitzvahs, that as partners, we are moving to the final tikkun. As we are going into the time of Sukkot, which is non-Simchateno, may we keep this in mind. May we rejoice with Hashem, truly recognize him. And I'd like to wish everybody a good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom, Hag Sameach, and good Yantif.